Hello, I'm James.
I'm Dustin.
I'm Jerry.
And this is our interpretation of The Mirror and the Mask by Jorge Luis Borges for Spanish 290, Spanish and Latin American literature in English, taught by Dr. Gaylor. So the story opens up with a great victory over Norway by the Irish kingdom, and the Irish king wants to have the victory immortalized in word, so he asks his great poet whether or not he thinks he's capable of such an undertaking. And the poet tells the king yes, that he is, and he explains that he's trained for years in all literary techniques, and he believes that he has mastered all literary techniques known to man at this time. And so the king agrees with him and says, yes, you're great, you're definitely capable. I'm going to give you 1 year to write the poem, and within this year's time I want you to write the perfect poem, since you have the perfect inspiration in this battle. And so he tells him he wants the poem honed and as good as it can be. And so the poet returns after a year's time and recites the poem, and everybody in the kingdom approves of it, including the king. And the king even refers to the poem as a great, or he says it's another victory. He says he gave each word its true meaning, and so with that he gives the poet, he requests another poem, and then he gives the poet a silver mirror.
With the mirror, the poet is able to see or find inner truth that should help him with his following poems. It says here that during this time his inspiration is basically nil. All that is well, and yet nothing has happened. In our veins the blood has beat no faster, and our hands have not gone for our bows. But even without this inspiration and outside external inspiration, he still has the mirror to help him. And the narrator states that with the second poem, the verses and the words, they were not a description of the battle, they were the battle. Meaning, in our interpretation of it, that he was having an inner battle with himself, with his findings, and putting it into poetry.
So the king takes the only copy and locks it in a box, or puts it in a box, which in contrast to the first poem, which he had transcribed many times so everybody could see, this one he didn't want anybody to see because people wouldn't understand.
So after the second poem, which was better than the first, and the king definitely approved of, he was yearning for a third, and so he gave the poet a gold mask.
So the poet accepted the gift, the mask, the gold mask, and we believe that the mask symbolized the hiding of the second poem. Unlike the first poem, which was distributed everywhere, the second poem was hidden, just like the mask hides something. We believe that the mask gave him inspiration to look beyond himself to further his skill in poetry. So he comes back and is in audience with the king, and the king notices that he's greatly changed, and it says here, something which was not simply time had furrowed and transformed his features. And he also seemed like he didn't want to say the poem, so he asked the king for a private audience, and the king gives him the courage to whisper the poem in his ear. And when the king hears his poem, he describes all of his adventures and the things he's seen in all those adventures, such as silver greyhounds that hunted golden boars and vaulted rivers that hung from the sky. And he said from all those things, nothing compared to this poem. And it's like the poet found the true nature of poetry. And so the poem was so beautiful that the king and the poet felt like they had sinned. So for the third gift, the king gave the poet a dagger, and the poet ended up killing himself, and the king gave up his wealth and his kingdom to become a beggar as a penance for their sin for knowing such beauty, which was the poetry.
Okay, so a quick summation of what we believe the interpretation of the story is that basically the poet had all this wonderful inspiration and started out with all these literary techniques, and then when he was without those, he had to discover the true nature of poetry. And so as he moved closer and closer to the true nature of poetry, and he found it, he and the king believed they had sinned because no mortal should know such beauty. And so that's the Mirror and the Mask by Borges.